Hello YouTube, welcome back to yet another video. This video is about the latest character in Global, Lacrimosa. So we are going to do a deep dive into like her build and kit and her team comp and all those things in this particular video. Also, this footage is taken from the content creator server, so there are some things that might not match with the global server. So keep that in mind. So for this video, we'll do a deep dive into Lacrimosa's main mechanic, her team comps, her 3 different team comps that are currently meta on CN, her cartridges and her modules, and then her different details of her 6 awakenings and which one you should choose. I'll put a timestamp for all the different components that we're going to talk about in the description and on the video, so you can jump to whichever part that you're more interested in. So one of Lacrimosa's main mechanic is Nightmare. Nightmare is basically a damage over time, or DOT. All DOT, including Scotch and Nightmare and all the other DOT in the game, has a fixed 50% crit rate. But the crit damage depends on the person like applying the damage. So in this case, it would be Lacrimosa. And then for Nightmare, there's a maximum of 10 stacks, and then it lasts for 3 seconds. Also, Nightmare counts as chaos damage. Also, there's one thing to note about Lacrimosa and her Nightmare, which is her ultimate, because she has 2 forms, they apply different amount of stacks of Nightmare. So if you can see here, this is Tomato Metal is basically close combat. So when you use the close combat ultimate, it will instantly apply 10 stack. But if you use range combat, it will only apply 5 stack. So most of the time, you would want to keep Lacrimosa on her close combat state. Alright, now that we are done with like the mechanic for Nightmare, we are going to go into the Lacrimosa's second most important mechanic, which is the copying of an enemy. So when you hold your left attack button, it will appear like this. If your cursor has the little bat wings, it means that you can copy the enemy you're currently facing. And if you can't copy enemy, your cursor will look like this. It will be like a negative, red negative in the middle. And the creatures that you copy are permanent, their ability. So how do you want to change them? You want to come to Lacrimosa's character page. You go to Expert Ability and go to click on this thing that looks like a stem. Then here you can see, it's kind of like a Pokédex of all the monsters that you can copy in the game. And you will also record all the monsters that you have already copied. So here you can just learn skill and it will be permanent until you like copy another skill or click forget skill. And you can pick whatever skill that you wishes. So why would you want to copy the enemy skill? Because one of the buff is it will automatically up Lacrimosa. You can see here, it will gain 30% of the enemy's attack base. So the stronger the enemy you copy, the stronger Lacrimosa will be. But the maximum is capped at 200. So based on the logic, you will want to copy like the most strongest boss in the game, right? Wrong, because there's actually 2 downsides to Lacrimosa's like copy skill. This is something I've like noticed from playing Lacrimosa for a while. So one of the downside of Lacrimosa's E is that when you are in their monster form, you are not immune to damage, which you will see in this combat. So I turn to the enemy and I still get hit by the enemy. I still got damage when I'm in the enemy form. So that's one of the downside to the skill. Another downside is that the animation time for some of the more powerful monsters are quite long, which will result in the situation where after you swap back to a character, you cannot swap back to Lacrimosa fast enough, thus wasting your DPS uptime. So how do you resolve this problem? So there are 2 ways to go around this. Number 1 is when you use Lacrimosa's copy skill, you instantly swap to another character and use their ultimate time to buy time over for Lacrimosa to finish her animation time, and then instantly swap back to Lacrimosa. So that's one way. The second method is even easier. Just find a monster whose animation is not that long, and then just get on with it. Of course, you can also like combine both of them. Just use a quick animation character and then also swap during that process. That works as well. So that kind of like leads to a conundrum, because powerful monsters will give Lacrimosa bigger buff, but it will also expose you to more danger because the animation is longer. And then quick animation monsters will provide smaller buff. Also, it really depends on how you want to balance the two. So in summary, also I have a picture to show you in regards to which monster to copy that is like most valuable. Currently in game, these are the 3 monsters that I recommend you copy. Quite lucky because 2 of them already come with the game, with the system in place. Because the first one is the Headless Rider, which is you can get from completing Lacrimosa's trial. The second one is the Tomato Demon, which you'll get from completing Lacrimosa's like mission side quest. And you have to complete that to unlock her copy skill. So these 2 is default. The third one is the Black Book, which is best for best group damage. Right, now that we have talked about the 2 mechanics, we're going to talk about something something that is like tied to Lacrimosa's support skill, which is the way she can uses her 2 different E skill in one rotation. So she can uses her monster copy skill, and then within the same rotation uses her normal E. And how you do that is basically you want to unlock this skill, the second one here. So basically, after you use your special copy skill, you attack 5 normal times, 5 normal attacks, and then it will instantly refresh your cooldown for your normal E. I'll show you directly in combat, which is easier to understand. So here I will start with my copy skill. Then you need to do 5 normal attack. It doesn't matter whether it's a combo or not, you just need 5 normal attack, and then it will instantly refresh your E. So now I'll use this and then press normal attack again to launch your 5th combo. Normal attack combo, which will deal a lot of damage. So that is basically the normal rotation for Lacrimosa. So right now we're going to talk about Lacrimosa's Awakening. There's 3 of them that is quite easy to explain, so we're going to speed through them. Number 1 is increased damage ratio of Nightmare. And number 4 is extend Nightmare duration to 6%. And then this increased damage by Lacrimosa when she uses the support skill. So for these are like simpler to understand one. For number 3 is it will turn Lacrimosa from a DOT into a burst DPS, which is whenever Lacrimosa uses her 5th normal attack, it will instantly calculate all the stacks of Nightmare on the enemy. And there is an easier way to trigger this, which is, if you can remember earlier from the rotation, after you use normal attack, after your normal E, it will instantly trigger your 5th attack. So that is how you can trigger this effect quite easily. So I'll show you directly in combat as well, because I think that's easier to understand. Now we'll start by trying to inflict Nightmare stack on the enemy. So you can follow that by looking at the icon underneath their name. So now we have 10 stack. So we are going to use our E and then instantly use A. It will instantly collect everything and then turn that into a burst attack. So there is Awakening 3. Now we're going to talk about Awakening 5. This is in Mandarin, but it's alright. I'm a translator after all. So basically when you inflict Nightmare, you're going to lower the enemy's maximum HP. And every 3 seconds, the damage inflicted from Nightmare is going to heal Lacrimosa for 1.5%. The healing, I'm going to be honest, it's not that great. You wouldn't see it that often. But the lowering their maximum HP, it's like very high. So that is like very evident in the game. So I'll show you directly in combat as well. Right now, again, we're going to try to stack Nightmare on the enemy. So you can see on the enemy's HP bar, there's a kind of a grey bar that is accumulating as I inflict the enemy with Nightmare. So that is like your Awakening 5 doing the work. So you can see how much that is like already hurting the enemy. Also you can see like about every few seconds I have like a bit of a healing green number on Lacrimosa. That is also the effect of like Awakening 5. The healing is not so much, but you can see the maximum HP reduction is a lot. And because they accumulate as well. So yeah, that is why Awakening 5 is very precious. Alright, for Awakening 6 is a completely different deal because it's a technical skill related to Esper Cycle. If you are familiar with our MC, it's basically that skill. So whenever she uses her copy skill, like Lacrimosa uses her monster copy skill, within the next second, you can swap to any other character that can inflict Nova, Discord, and Scotch, even without their Esper energy being full. So this can only happen one time every 5 seconds. So you can only, it basically increases one extra Esper cycle reaction. So whether that's good or not really depends on how well you handle like the technical side of thing in the game. So I'll show you this in combat as well. Right, you can see here both Lacrimosa and Sakiri has no Esper energy, which doesn't matter because after I use my Mimic skill, I switch to Sakiri and then Lacrimosa has the Esper energy. So you can instantly switch back to her. And trigger, in that case, was Scotch. And that is basically a showcase of her Awakening 6. Alright, so now that we have seen all the 6 Awakening, if you ask me which one is like more valuable for Lacrimosa, it depends on how you want to play her. If you are playing her as a brute force DPS, definitely go for number 5 because it provides like maximum HP reduction and also a bit of healing. So number 5 is your main one you want to go for. If you are playing more of a technical player and has like more interest in like swapping in and out and causing Esper reaction, of course go for number 6. But if you have like a lot of awakenings, the order would be 5, 4, 1, just to max out your nightmare damage. If you want to play technical, like a bit more technical, it would be just input 6 in front. So it would be 6 and then 5 and then like the rest. So the important one is number 6 and number 5. But that also like depends on your play style. Alright, so after the whole mechanic, let's move on to the cartridges, the console and the module. So for Lacrimosa, because as I mentioned earlier, she's a Chaos DOT damage dealer, so she definitely wants Diabolos. And as for what kind of main stat she wants, please, I will refer you to this visual aid. So based on the different state of your how many copies of Lacrimosa and whether you have her arc or not, there's like different ways to build her cartridges. So if you look at the the picture, so if you have no arc and if you have no awakening for Lacrimosa, because her arc will provide her with 24% of crit rate. So based on calculation and testing that I've done, Lacrimosa, when she doesn't have like high awakening, she deals most damage through her normal attack and her skill and not nightmare, that is like for high awakening. So if you have no arc and no awakening, I would suggest you go for crit rate and then crit damage. You want to try to achieve around like 50 to 60% crit rate. And then if you have her arc but you don't have her awakening, you also go for crit rate first. Try to get around like 70 because her arc already give you like 24%. So it should be easier to go for crit rate at 70%. So if you achieve crit rate, you can go for crit damage and chaos damage. Those two are equally important. And if you have high awakening and also like if you have her arc as well, it will turn her damage more into nightmare, which is considered chaos damage. So for that, you want to focus on her main stat being chaos damage boost, because in actual combat, DOT is going to trigger more often than like you hitting enemy, because you have to consider your character moving around and swapping character and so on. So when you have like high awakening, it's recommended your main stat is chaos damage, and then after that you go for like crit rate and crit damage and so on. Alright, for Lacrimosa's team, this video we're going to focus on like 3 meta team, but not really meta, the 3 more like interesting team currently in the game on CN. So Lacrimosa's most important teammate is actually Sakiri, because if you look at Sakiri and her Esper ability, this one, yeah, can I eat this? It will increase DOT damage for each type of DOT effect while in Scotch state. So Sakiri is actually the best teammate for Lacrimosa. So if you don't have Sakiri, it's gonna be a bit difficult playing Lacrimosa. So in her team, you these 2 is fixed: Lacrimosa, Sakiri. The third place is actually also fixed for Hanyu, because Lacrimosa actually also wants to trigger, especially when you play around the Esper reaction, you also want to trigger Nova, and Hanyu is like the best general support at the moment. So these three is basically fixed. These two is like 100% fixed. Hanyu, you can maybe swap her out for Fadia as well for survivability. But for most of the team I'll showcase today, these three is fixed. So Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Hanyu, or Fadia if you want. So for the first team we are going to showcase now is the basically the main DPS and like not really skillful team, which is fine because I also use this team most often because like, I don't need to because I'm not that much of a clever person. So this is like easiest for me, like easiest to control and like high damage output as well. So you have Lacrimosa, you have Sakiri, you have Hanyu. The fourth slot, I use Adler, or you can use Fadia. Both of them like either way depends on how you want to look at things. Adler is a special mention here because he also pairs well with Sakiri because he is also the other character who applies DOT on his skill here. States that we apply DOT, so that will buff Sakiri and Sakiri will buff Lacrimosa. Special mention here to Pai Chang because Pai Chang is also DOT, but Pai Chang is not really used that much because Lacrimosa want to be on field and Pai Chang want to be on field. So both on field main DPS, it can work, but it's going to be a bit more difficult. That's why I won't be showcasing that here. So this is basically the first team. You can see from the picture, it's going to be Lacrimosa as the main DPS, Sakiri as the DOT buff, and then Hanyu as the general buff, and then Adler or Fadia as the shield, depending on whoever you prefer to use. I'll be using Adler. So for the team rotation of this team is actually quite easy. Just want to start with your support. Here in this case would be Sakiri, and then E, and then Q, and go to Hanyu, and then Q, E, that will buff everyone. And you switch to Lacrimosa for the reaction, and then use your Q, then your E, and then switch over to Adler for the Q, for the E, and then switch back to Lacrimosa for the Esper reaction, and then just continue whacking an enemy. Keep up with your rotation, and then that's pretty much it. Alright, now this is the second team, which we have the same 3 core member, but instead of like a survivor shielder, we have Daffodil, which is to help break. Because Daffodil breaks the enemy, and then Lacrimosa has her enables the broken enemy to stay broken longer, and also her Scotch deal extra damage to broken enemy. So this is also a team that you can use, but it is like a lot more mechanical than the previous team. Also, I only suggest you use this team is like your Daffodil is high awakening, because she really do needs her awakening to make this work, because she requires like a lot of like stuff to support the break base style. So if you don't have Daffodil at high awakening, I would say forget about this. So you look at the picture again, the three first character main row is the same, and then the last row you're going to replace that with Daffodil. But I only suggest you play this team if you have Daffodil at high awakening to boost her break efficiency. So now we'll jump into combat. Alright, for this team you want to start with Daffodil and use Q to apply incantation. Then we're going to try to apply Discord, so you switch to Sakiri, E, and then Q. You switch back to Daffodil to use your E because it's full. And then switch to Hanyu, and Hanyu will Q and E to buff everyone. You switch back to Daffodil. Oh, why that didn't get back my ultimate? Oh yeah, it's on cooldown, never mind. So then switch to Lacrimosa. Again, go to the cycle, Q, and then E, switch to another person. Here I use Sakiri, doesn't matter who you switch to. And you switch back to Lacrimosa. And when the enemy is broken, you want to focus on Lacrimosa. Here, just keep like repeating what you did for the DPS team and then just like go ahead. That should be it for this particular team. There's definitely a lot more switching going around compared to the previous group. And you have to keep track of like everyone's expert cycle and all those things. So it is definitely more difficult. Alright, and then the last team is definitely the most technical team. Also the team that my brain cannot really fathom at all. It is the Hotori's team. Because you remember Lacrimosa's Awakening 6 turned her into a support like Esper cycle enabler. So whenever you talk about Esper reaction, you can always put in Hotori. So Hotori is here to copy like the reaction that Lacrimosa enable. To be honest, there's so many different ways to do this because like it just like there's way too many options. I'm just gonna like try to use a rotation that makes sense to my brain because to be honest, some other there are many different rotations and some are way too complex for my brain to fathom. But this is the third team that we are gonna showcase today. So that's that. We're gonna jump right into combat. Okay, let's try to copy this and then Nova then here.
Hey, need any help? Come back. Time flows on.
Oh yeah, they will trigger another Discord there.
The moon has set.
We have to say that very large team com is way too complex for my tiny brain to understand, but that's like one of the showcase that you can do. Just like watch everyone's Esper cycle energy. So that's the third team, the Hotori team. Alright, that's pretty much covers everything from Lacrimosa's mechanics to her awakening, her console, her team. So if you have any question, drop them down in the comments down below. I'll try my best to answer. If you like this kind of content, please remember to drop a follow and like. Have a great day, everyone. Good luck with your pulls if you are pulling, and have a good day or have a good time zone.